Think about the most difficult person in your life, the one who somehow makes every conversation circle back to them, the one who never really apologizes, only explains, the one who leaves you feeling slightly smaller after you spend time together. At some point, you probably thought it. They are a narcissist. But here's the uncomfortable question that usually follows in silence. What if I am one too? The word narcissist is everywhere now. Your ex was one. Your boss is one. That influencer posting endless selfies must be one. The term has become shorthand for selfish, arrogant, or annoying. But psychology is more precise than that. Most people using the word are not describing a clinical condition. They are describing frustration. So before you diagnose someone else or spiral about yourself, we need to understand what narcissism actually is. Start with something simple. Do you enjoy compliments? Do you feel good when someone recognizes your effort? Do you like being admired for something you worked hard to achieve? If your answer is yes, that does not make you pathological, it makes you human. Narcissism, in psychological terms, is a personality trait. It exists on a spectrum. Some degree of self-focus and desire for recognition is normal and even useful. Research has linked moderate narcissistic traits with confidence, assertiveness, and leadership potential. Without some belief in yourself, you would never apply for the job, ask for the promotion, or take social risks. The problem is not self-esteem. The problem is when self-esteem becomes dependent on superiority. When people use the word narcissist seriously, they are usually referring to narcissistic personality disorder. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders defines it as a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, intense need for admiration, and lack of empathy that begins by early adulthood and appears across contexts. This is not someone who likes praise. It is someone whose identity is built on being above others and whose relationships revolve around validation and control. One of the clearest ways to see the difference is through criticism. Imagine someone gives you constructive feedback, not an insult, just a calm observation that you could improve something. You might feel embarrassed, you might feel irritated, but eventually you process it. In pathological narcissism, that moment feels like an attack on identity itself. Psychologists call this narcissistic injury. Research consistently shows that individuals high in narcissistic traits react more defensively and sometimes aggressively to ego threats. The reaction is often disproportionate because the self-image underneath is unstable. This is where the misunderstanding begins. Narcissism is not strong self-esteem. It is unstable self-esteem. Researchers such as W. Keith Campbell and Jean Twenge have found that narcissistic individuals often report high confidence, but that confidence fluctuates sharply when challenged. It depends on admiration and external validation. Remove the applause and the structure trembles. That is why someone can appear bold and charismatic in one setting and deeply defensive in another. The confidence is real, but it is fragile. If you are genuinely worried that you might be a narcissist, that concern itself is meaningful. Severe narcissism rarely questions itself. Persistent self-reflection and fear of harming others are generally inconsistent with clinical narcissistic pathology. People with entrenched narcissistic patterns tend to externalize blame. They do not spend time examining whether they are the problem. It is also important to recognize that narcissism does not always look loud or dominant. Psychologists distinguish between grandiose and vulnerable narcissism. Grandiose narcissism is assertive, attention-seeking, and socially confident. Vulnerable narcissism is quieter. It involves hypersensitivity, defensiveness, and a chronic feeling of being misunderstood or underappreciated while still believing one deserves more recognition. Both share a central trait: entitlement, a belief that one deserves special treatment without necessarily earning it. Entitlement predicts more relationship damage than confidence does. It is not ambition that strains bonds. It is the expectation of special rules. Empathy becomes the dividing line. Functional imaging studies have found reduced activation in empathy-related brain regions among individuals high in narcissistic traits when viewing emotional content. This does not mean they cannot intellectually understand someone else's feelings. It suggests difficulty sustaining emotional concern when it conflicts with their own needs. In everyday life, this can look like quickly redirecting attention back to themselves when someone else is distressed. Before labeling others, consider why the label feels satisfying. Assigning someone the title narcissist simplifies uncertainty. It turns a confusing dynamic into a single explanation. Personality research shows that traits overlap and interact. Trauma responses can resemble narcissism. Insecurity can resemble narcissism. High extroversion can resemble narcissism. Not every selfish moment indicates a disorder. Humans are inconsistent. Personality is layered. There is also projection. Studies suggest individuals higher in narcissistic traits are more likely to perceive narcissism in others. It can be easier to detect ego externally than to confront it internally. If you consistently feel surrounded by narcissists, it may be worth examining that pattern. The common denominator in every social circle deserves attention. In relationships, elevated narcissistic traits are associated with greater conflict and lower long-term satisfaction, especially when combined with low empathy and high entitlement. Partners of individuals high in narcissistic traits often report feeling unseen or emotionally invalidated. Over time, this dynamic can erode closeness. What begins as charm may shift into control. What begins as confidence may become dominance. At the same time, narcissistic defenses rarely appear out of nowhere. Some developmental theories suggest that early environments marked by either excessive conditional praise or harsh, inconsistent criticism can contribute to narcissistic patterns forming. In some cases, narcissism functions as armor. It protects against deep insecurity and fear of inadequacy, but armor that protects one person can wound others. Personality is shaped by genetics, environment, and repeated experiences. Longitudinal research indicates that narcissistic traits often peak in adolescence and early adulthood, then gradually decline across the lifespan for most individuals. Maturity, stable relationships, and life experience can reduce extreme self-focus. Personality is not frozen, it adapts. Can someone simply decide to stop being narcissistic? Not instantly. Traits are not switches, but therapeutic approaches focused on increasing empathy, improving emotional regulation, and fostering accountability have shown potential for reducing maladaptive narcissistic traits over time. Change requires awareness and willingness, but it is not impossible. So where does that leave you? If you worry about being a narcissist, that concern suggests intact empathy. If you suspect someone else might be one, look beyond isolated moments. Watch patterns. Watch how they respond to criticism. Watch how they treat people who cannot offer them status or admiration. Watch whether they can apologize without turning it into self-defense. Most importantly, watch how you feel around them. Do you feel respected, or do you feel diminished? Diagnosis or not, your experience matters. Here's the part that is harder to accept. We all have narcissistic moments. We all enjoy admiration. We all defend our ego when it feels threatened. The difference is whether we can step back and choose connection over control, whether we can tolerate being ordinary without collapsing, whether we can admit fault without rewriting the narrative. So are you a narcissist? In the clinical sense, statistically, probably not. Can you spot one? Sometimes. But certainty can be dangerous. Personality is complex and fluid. Labels are simple and rigid. The more confident someone is in diagnosing everyone around them, the more carefully you should observe them. Real psychological maturity is not about identifying flaws in others. It is about recognizing your own without being destroyed by them. That balance between self-respect and humility is far more important than any label. And if you can hold that tension without needing to feel superior, you are already further from pathological narcissism than you think. For more psychological breakdowns like this, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe.